Hi, Stephanie Beninati here. So a lot of you have been asking about certificates of insurance, and I'm really glad that you have, because it's becoming more challenging not only to get them, but the insurance carriers, your insurance carriers and your policies are requiring more from the builders. And so it's really great that we're going to go over this right now. So first of all, it's really important to read this here, these two paragraphs, and also right here, because it really tells you that this certificate doesn't mean anything. It doesn't. It can, first of all, these certificates can be forged very easily now with all the Adobe products that you can manipulate. I mean, right here, I can just let you know I can edit, and I can take things out and add things in. So, I mean, it's pretty easy to edit these things. So I can put whatever I want in here. So I didn't mean to scare you guys, but that's just the way that it is. But it is a good foundation for the other documents that we're looking for. So what we want to see is these little, just the sample cert is really just as much as we can, information as we can get. We want to see it here. So additional ADDL is additional insured, and this is waiver of subrogation. And then down here we have a description, and this is how we want the contract language to say, and then they just write it in here. And sometimes people will get a certificate for each project, and sometimes they'll just get all projects. But one of the things that's really good to do is to do a spot check when it comes to certificates of insurance, so you make sure that they don't get the insurance and then cancel it. One of the things many of you may or may not know is that we actually have a certificate tracking program here that we offer for our clients at a fee, and this is what we use. So it's great for you guys. You can look at this and maybe make something similar, and this goes to your subcontractor's agent, and this is a compliance statement. And what it does is it basically tells them what needs to be written in the certificate, and then it asks some more pressing questions, which is this one I like: has your coverage been lowered due to claims? Because often the person doing the certificate may not know that there was a claim that was just paid out. So these questions make the insurance agent really, investigate a little bit more, and because they have to sign it at the very bottom. So this is a really great form to use. The other thing that's really important is that we are seeing a lot of residential construction exclusions or limitations. So it's really important that we ask these questions. Subsidence or earth movement for particular subs are going to be important, and overspray exclusion for particular subs. So these are coverages that we are starting to see exclusions for that used to be just standard. And by the way, a commercial general liability policy, how it works is that if it's not excluded, if it's not written in the contract that it's excluded, it is included. So that's how the policies work. So they are actually starting to put limitations and exclusions on these policies. So it's really important that we look for that. And then we want to ask for the actual endorsements to the policy. So these are endorsements that come in the policy. We want to see a policy number. This is a waiver of rights. Basically, this is the waiver of subrogation. But one of the things is that, as you'll see as you go to bind your policies, now they're asking for the subcontractor agreement. You have to have a subcontractor agreement that has these provisions in it, because it says as required by written contract. So if you don't have a subcontractor agreement requiring your subcontractor have these insurance requirements, then there could be a situation with your insurance, if there is a claim, that they could hold you responsible and throw in an extra $25,000 deductible or self-insured retention. So there's some things that can happen in your policy that can be triggered if you don't meet their requirements. This is another waiver of subrogation, and really what this is saying is that your insurance carrier is telling you to make sure that your subcontractors has an endorsement on their policy that says that if we pay out for a claim, so I'm going to use your roofer, if your roofer pays out for a claim that they, they did something wrong, that their insurance carrier will not go after your insurance carrier. So when you pay something out and then you go after the other party, it's called subrogate. So that's what they want your subcontractors to insurance carriers to say they won't do that. And that's an extra fee sometimes for your subcontractor. And this is a very similar primary non-contributory wording. So this is a little bit like waiver of subrogation, but going back to a roof claim, it's saying that my policy will be primary, which is your subcontractor. They're saying their policy will be primary and that we will not ask your policy to contribute. So your insurance carrier wants all your subs policies to be primary and not ask them to contribute. Of course, obviously that's not going to happen. You're always going to be the first named, but they want you to do your due diligence and make sure that they have that verbiage. Additional insured, again, primary non-contributory, so just looks a little bit different. So I'm just showing you some. This is where we get into some exclusions like designated work. So it's important to look for these. We ask for them on the compliance statement. So they really don't want people doing single family tract homes. There's a different product for that. So if you're doing single family tract homes, you need to make sure that your subcontractor's insurance will allow them to, because it's a lot more expensive if you get an insurance policy that allows you to work on or build new residential single family homes over 20 units usually, as we're seeing. So they're not all standard. The carriers can make adjustments to these. This one is an exclusion for tract housing of greater than 20 units and all residential condominiums, townhomes, and timeshares. So that's basically, this policy is only for single family homes that are no greater than 20 homes. And if you read it, you have to read it and say, is that in a development, which it is, or is that in a year? Because sometimes this one says when one project or development, some of these policies might say no more than 20 in a year. So it's just important that you have to do a little bit more digging. Exclusion open roof. So obviously, if you're building a house, you need to make sure that the roof is closed up at the end of the day. If there is some weather comes through and there's damage and they find that the roof was not closed up properly, they could not pay for it. So if you have a roofer, you want to look and make sure that if they have this exclusion. Designated ongoing operations, so they're going to list what they will not cover, and in this case, condominium is the designated work that they're not going to cover. So if you're doing townhomes, right, even if you're doing 6 townhomes, you have to see and make sure your subcontractor has coverage for that, because a lot of these exclusions apply. And what's even more scary is that they may not have applied last year, but because these policies change, and it's not like they send out a lot of information that they just change. It's up to the agent to read it. So if the subcontractor's agent isn't specializing in this type of insurance, it may not even occur to them to read it. Wrap up, and this is pretty much always excluded, because when you are in a wrap, that coverage pays for it. So continuous and progressive injury. Now this exclusion is it's a little hard with Colorado law, because sometimes Colorado law will trump what is in a policy, but they have reworded it a little bit so it could apply. And then there's some we need to talk about additional insured. When you're asking for additional insured, that you ask for completed operations as well. This is for ongoing operations. So basically, and again, as required by written contract, it states right there. So you have to have a contract that links all these coverages together, and then this one's for completed operations. So you're obviously, you're going to have insurance for during the course of construction, but your roofer, your drywaller, your framer, your window installer, after the fact, if you don't have a completed operation, additional insured status, then you could be liable for that product if it fails. So it's really important. So there's another, here you have a policy number. Obviously, I just put that in, but I'm showing you some different ways that they might look. And then this is for workers' comp. So workers' comp is a little bit more complicated. If you already have workers' compensation, then you are required to have a declaration of independent contractor status form signed and approved by Pinnacle. And the reason is because anybody who is an independent contractor can be approved by Pinnacle to work on your job site, but that is independently of any other people. So they can come and do their job independently. If they are a tradesperson or a subcontractor like a framer or a roofer, they're obviously going to need other people. And often people say, well, they're 1099. They're all independent. Well, it doesn't really work like that. It doesn't work like that at all. If there has to be a laborer on that job site, and so if you hire a framer, the only way we're really going to get around it is if the second tier sub that's doing the work has workers' comp. But somebody in that chain of command has to have workers' comp, because you can't frame a house with one guy or two guys. So somebody has to have workers' comp. Otherwise, if there's an injury, it will fall on you. So those are things to think about. And the reason why I have another video that talks about, even if you don't have employees, why you might want to carry work comp, because possibly, if you get a second or third tier sub on there and they get injured, you can get sued for that. So really, here are the requirements of what an independent contractor is, and you have to meet all of those. And so you sign that, and then over here they notarize it. And Pinnacle says you only have to do it once, but I would do it every year or every other year, because subcontractors' businesses change, and you want to make sure that you're still, in alignment with them. So that is your Pinnacle. And then I put in here, this is a small portion of a subcontractor agreement that is only focused on the insurance requirements. So the insurance carriers want to see a subcontractor agreement and all they're looking for is this piece of it. So this is a sample. I pulled it from somebody. You really, need to have your attorney look at it. These are just examples of, subcontractor agreements, and I don't even know how old these are. So, please do not use these. These are not for you to use. They're just for you to get an idea of what it should look like. So this is pretty good here, and it says waiver of rights and things like that, workers' compensation, $1 million, commercial auto if it's, and an umbrella. Now those are things that you can decide if the particular subcontractor is driving up on the job and unloading and using vehicles to do their work, then you absolutely want to see some sort of commercial policy. If they are just driving to the job and parking and getting out and doing their work and going back to their car, then maybe you don't need to look at the commercial auto. It's really got to be how you want to run your business. If you're doing a lot of construction, you may require an umbrella policy. If you're not doing that much, you may not feel an umbrella. You might feel an umbrella policy's over-insured. So commercial property and inland marine, and so these, obviously you're not going to get all the insurance, but environmental and pollution is another insurance that we're seeing a lot of these days. So this is, again, a good sample of to get you started and to talk to your attorney about putting together a nice contract for you if you don't already have one. All right, so I hope that helps. I once again want to remind you, we do have a certificate tracking program where we will handle all of this for you at a fee. You can give us a call. I've put a little video in here that kind of explains it. So if that's something you want to outsource and take off your plate, we are absolutely happy to assist you. So have a great day. Thanks.